Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating piece by the poet Gola Tubusun. It's a poem that kicks off with this incredibly bold claim, and then it takes one of the most famous cities in the world and just completely redraws the map. So let's get into it. London is a Yoruba town. I mean, that's how it starts. It's provocative, right? But what's so cool is that the poem isn't really talking about demographics or population numbers. It's doing something way more creative and, frankly, more profound. Let's dig into how the poet uses language and memory to build this whole new map of London. So, the whole idea here is to create a new map. And we're not talking about a physical map with streets and tube lines. No, this is a cultural one, a map of perception that's laid right over the city we all think we know. And how does the poet pull this off? Well, he describes the city not just as it is, but as it could be seen through the words, the ideas, and the worldview of his own Yoruba heritage. It's like he's translating the city, turning everything from the mundane to the monumental into something new, something deeply personal. And the way he does it is just brilliant and so simple. The poem grounds this new map by taking these iconic Western figures and institutions and just swapping them out for their Yoruba equivalents. The comparisons he makes are incredibly powerful. So you get these lines where the poem just straight up kicks out the gods we're used to from Western culture. It says, not Zeus, Shango, not Poseidon, Ocean, not Loki with the tricks, Eshu at the crossroads near St. Pancras. I mean, with just a few words, the entire spiritual landscape of London is completely transformed. And, when the poem replaces a figure like Zeus with Sango, it's doing so much more than just swapping names. It's bringing in this powerful deity of thunder and justice and placing him right at the heart of London's restless sky. This isn't just decoration, it's a claim of spiritual presence, of real power. And it doesn't stop with the gods, not by a long shot. The poem moves right into the seat of political power, imagining the British Parliament as the home of the Yaumesi. Now, you have to understand, this is a huge deal. The Oyomesi weren't just some advisory board. These were the kingmakers of the great Oyo Empire. They had enough power to actually force a king to step down. So by putting them in parliament, the poem is imagining a totally different kind of political energy and history at play in Westminster. And right here, the reimagining gets even sharper. The queen isn't on a throne. She's on a carved wood stool, wearing Yoruba-style regalia. But look at that little note in parentheses. A gift from Admiral Rawson at the BM. It's subtle, but it's a really powerful critique of colonialism, a quiet reminder of how a lot of the cultural artifacts in London's museums actually got there in the first place. And that little note about the museum gift, well, that perfectly leads us into the next layer of this new map. See, it's not just about the present, it's about digging up a different history of London, a history that's deeply connected to the Nigerian diaspora and the city's colonial past. So you gotta ask, who are the ghosts on this map? They aren't the usual specters from English history books. No, these are figures from a different story, one that is completely intertwined with London. The poem brings up these names that represent generations of the Nigerian diaspora. You have historical figures like Sarah Forbes Bonetta, a Yoruba princess who became Queen Victoria's goddaughter, and then you have modern icons like the singer Sade Adu and the actor John Boyega. These are the stories that, as the poem says, roil with the rivers roaring beneath the bridges. This is where things get really powerful. The poet creates this incredible link between two different histories. He's looking at the ground around the Tower of London, a famous site of English executions, and he connects it to a Yoruba proverb about the heads of a king's enemies. It's his way of saying that these violent histories, these victims of power, they're buried under our feet everywhere, connecting two worlds that seem so far apart. But okay, it's not all about these huge historical ideas. The poem also zooms way in, shifting its focus to those small, personal moments where this Yoruba town suddenly becomes real, not as an idea, but as a sound, a feeling. So imagine this. The speaker is at a train station, and he overhears someone behind him arguing on the phone. And the words are in Yoruba, "Motisofu epe," which means, I have told you that. Just a simple, everyday phrase. Motisofu epe. And bam, in that one moment, the whole city just shifts on its axis for him. The poet calls it the glare of sudden recognition. Just hearing his own language, with its unique tones and rhythms, completely transforms this foreign public space into something familiar. Like he says, you cannot unhear it when it lands on the ear, with all the warmth of its distant rhythms. And that feeling of something familiar being hidden just under the surface, you see it in the way the poem talks about clothes, too. It mentions beautiful fabrics like adire, this traditional indigo-dyed cloth. But it points out that the London cold makes people hide these vibrant cultural markers under, and I love this phrase, the thick, woolly tripes of conformity. The identity is always there, just beneath the surface. Okay, so after all this, remapping the gods, the history, these personal moments, where are we? Is this about a cultural takeover? Is the idea to replace one culture with another? Not at all. The poem's conclusion is way more nuanced and much more beautiful. And this is where we see what the poem is really getting at. The new map doesn't just erase the old one. The goal isn't to say London isn't English. It's to say that another powerful, vibrant culture has put down roots so deep that it can coexist, that it can claim the city as its own as well. And it all comes together in this beautiful final line. We belong here now, like firm branches to a tree. It's such a perfect metaphor, right? It's not about taking over the tree. It's about growing as a vital, strong, and inseparable part of it. It's this assertion of a permanent, organic, and just undeniable belonging. So in the end, the poem kind of leaves us with this question to chew on. It's an explainer not just of a city, but of an experience that people in diasporas all over the world share. It asks all of us to think about how the sounds, the memories, and the stories we carry with us don't just help us get by in new places, but how they actually actively reshape those places into something we can truly call home.